Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Robert Allen, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major David Hawkes. We warmly welcome the family of Lance Corporal John Henry Warwick, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal John Henry Warwick. John Warwick was born on the 4th of February 1883 in the English village of Hurstbourne, Tarrant, the eldest son of William and Elizabeth Warwick. John eventually took up an apprenticeship with local carpenter E. Goodwin, who he trained with for 10 months. In October of 1905, he married Edith Jane Merchant in the village of Semley. They had their first child, Frederick William, 2 years later, but he died shortly after birth. Their second child, a son named Leslie John, was born in October of 1911. 2 years later, John and his family moved to Australia and settled in the Sydney suburb of Waverley, where he worked as a joiner. John Warwick enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 5th of December 1915. He was assigned to reinforcements of the 13th Battalion and began a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service from Sydney on the 9th of September 1916, sailing on board the troop ship Euripides. Private Warwick arrived back in England in late October that year, now a member of the Australian Forces. He continued training with his comrades and other new recruits in an English camp at Codford. In December, he was made acting corporal ahead of embarking for France later that month. Warwick joined his unit in the front lines on the 19th of December 1916, just in time to spend a bitterly cold winter in the trenches. Warwick's unit spent the first weeks of the new year rotating between duty in the trenches and working parties behind the lines. They were stationed around the front line on fatigue duties on the 31st of January when they came under fire from enemy lines. Warwick was hit and sustained a wound to his head, requiring immediate medical treatment. He was evacuated to hospital in the French city of Rouen, where he remained until March. His return to the front was marked by the enemy's strategic withdrawal to the fortified Hindenburg Line. Allied units eagerly followed the German retreat, believing the war was perhaps finally drawing to a close. It was not long, however, until their withdrawal halted at the enemy's new front line, near the French village of Bullecourt. Here, the Allies planned to mount an attack to break through German lines and capture the village. Warwick's unit attacked enemy positions at Bullecourt on the morning of the 11th of April 1917, under cover from tanks rather than artillery. As the men jumped over the parapet, the tanks quickly proved to be worse than useless, and the attacking infantry were left exposed to murderous enemy fire. Soon forced to retreat, Allied units suffered more than 3,000 casualties in one day. Among the dead was Lance Corporal John Warwick. He remained listed as missing in action for several months until October 1917, when a court of inquiry determined that he had been killed during his unit's attack on Bullecourt. His body was never recovered from the battlefield, and today he is commemorated on the Australian War Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux. John Warwick was 34 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of Lance Corporal Warwick alongside his wife Edith and young son Leslie is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal John Henry Warwick, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.